Hello everyone, and welcome to my very first Dark Souls character build. Not only is this my first Dark Souls build, but it's also the first character that I actually beat the game with. If you want to see what that was like for me, then check out my Sarge Plays Dark Souls playlist over on my main channel. The main stats for this build are Vitality, Endurance, and Dexterity. Vitality is your health bar. The more of it you have, the more hits you can take. It's by far the most straightforward of all your attributes, but that doesn't make it any less important. You're going to take a lot of damage on your adventure, and there will no doubt be some really close battles. Sometimes the difference between winning or losing is just having a sliver of health left when the boss's health bar is emptied. And to ensure that situation isn't flipped, you need to put points into Vitality. Endurance, on the other hand, is a slightly more complex stat. This one not only increases your stamina bar, but also your equip load and bleed resistance. Stamina is what you need to sprint, roll and attack, and this makes it pretty much the most important stat in the game. The more you have, the easier every single fight will be. Ideally, you want to raise this up to 40 in order to max out stamina at the soft cap of 160. The other major benefit is increasing equip load. If you want to keep moving quickly, and trust me, you really want to keep moving quickly, then the total weight of your equipped items needs to be under 25% of your maximum equip load. Every point of endurance gives an additional point of equip load. Because you need to stay at under a quarter, you basically need to sink 4 points into this in order to get another point of usable equip load, so this really is a stat that needs to be high. Final of the main attributes is Dexterity. This is our weapon skill, allowing us to effectively wield our weapons of choice and significantly increase their damage. And that's basically it. You raise this skill, you deal more damage. Nice and easy. The additional stats you'll want to level with this character are Strength, Faith, and Attunement. Strength, much like Dexterity, is all about dealing damage. You'll need a little bit in order to wield everything effectively, and you can invest a little more in order to boost your damage further. The weapons for this build are primarily dex scaling, but Strength will also boost them a little. Faith is the skill which allows you to cast miracles. Each of these miracles has a minimum requirement of faith in order to cast them, so you only need to raise this attribute enough to be able to reach the threshold for whichever miracles you plan to use. In order to junction these miracles though, you'll also need some attunement. With 10 in this stat, you gain a single slot for your miracles, making it the minimum you'll need available. At 12, you will then gain a second slot, which I would highly recommend. On to equipment now, where I'll start with the weapons. First up here is the Balder Side Sword. On paper, this weapon doesn't look anything too impressive. The stats aren't bad, and it has good dex scaling, but the overall damage is a little low. The strength of this weapon comes from its versatile moveset and low stamina cost. You can jab, you can slash, you can thrust. Doesn't matter if you're in a wide open arena or a narrow corridor, this sword is just as effective wherever it's used. The reasonably fast speed and low stamina consumption also helps to make up for the relatively low attack power, meaning you can get in multiple swings rather than the more common one big hit. This means that even though your damage may not seem crazy high, your overall DPS is just as good, if not sometimes better, as you can always get a quick hit in. The one disadvantage of this weapon is that you will have to rely on a random drop to acquire it. Balder Knights have a 1% chance to drop it, meaning you may well have to farm them for some time. You can first farm them in the Undead Parish, and I'd recommend doing so to get the sword early on. They also drop Titanite shards, so if you do have to spend a while farming for the weapon, you should at least be able to upgrade it right away. That's the only item you'll need to farm for, so let's now move on to the Grasscrest Shield. This shield can be acquired in Darkroot Basin, right from the start of the game if you choose the Master Key as your starting gift. The reason you want this shield isn't so much for its defensive capabilities, but for the stamina regen it imparts. There are only 3 equipable items in the game which give this bonus, and for my money, this is the easiest one to get. And while you're grabbing the shield, you should also pick up the longbow. This can be found a short way above the shield in Darkroot Garden. It's surprising just how easy this item is to acquire, considering that it's the best weapon in the entire game. That's right, nothing is better than the longbow. And you can fight me on that one, and I will win because I'll shoot you before you get close enough to even hit me. This is a long-range precision weapon which has S-tier scaling on dexterity when upgraded, meaning it gets the maximum possible boost from that stat. Not only can you use this weapon for the obvious, shooting enemies to kill them at a distance, but you can also be sneaky with the weapon, and draw out foes to face them on more even ground. Dark Souls loves to force you into difficult battles on dangerous ledges or in choke points, By shooting at enemies you can draw them towards you, letting you fight the battle on your own terms. On to our final weapon, the Forelun Talisman. A talisman is what you need in order to cast miracles. I went with this particular talisman as you can buy it at Firelink Shrine from Petrus, and it seemed to be better than the base variant, but honestly I'm still not like 100% certain on that. Apparently this is the one you want if you're relatively low faith overall, but any will work. The more important part of this is the miracles you choose. While I was playing there were two I could rely on. The first is Heal. Like the name implies, this will heal you. This can also be purchased from Petrus, and is a nice little way to help bolster your Estus flasks. The other miracle is the more interesting one, Replenishment. This provides you with health regen for a full minute, an incredibly useful buff for many of the boss fights you will have to deal with. The big downside to this miracle is that you won't be able to get a hold of it early on. In order to acquire this, you need to save Rhea of Forelund in the Tomb of the Giants. This is an area which isn't unlocked until after you acquire the Lord Vessel, and it's also the worst place in the entire game. Absolutely sucks to get a hold of, but it is worth it. Moving away from the weapons, we now take a look at the armour, for which I chose the full Wanderer set. This was mostly because it is the starting apparel for the Wanderer class, meaning you can potentially have it right from the very start of the game. The other advantages are the very lightweight, and the fact it looks really cool. The actual stats of equipment aren't the biggest deal in the game, though you should still upgrade these pieces when you can. What matters more is the low weight, allowing you to keep moving fast while being fully dressed. If you didn't start as the Wanderer class, you can still acquire this set in Blighttown. The final equipment section to go over are the rings. The first, and by far most important ring you will want to have equipped, is the Ring of Favour and Protection. This provides a boost to health, stamina, and equip load by 20%. This is huge. Like seriously, this is the best ring in the game. So good that you should never take it off. Seriously, if you take off a ring it will permanently break and you can't use it again. But that's not a problem, because you shouldn't be taking it off anyway. While the 20% boost sounds good as is, it's also the only item which allows you to go above the stamina softcap. Normally, stamina maxes out at 160, but with this equipped you can get it up to 192. I think I've made it clear just how good this item is, but in order to get it you will need to kill Knight Lautrec. This is most easily done once he relocates to Firelink Shrine, but if you're willing to wait a while for the ring, you can also do so at the end of his questline. In terms of the other ring slot you have available, this will be the one that you switch around depending on the circumstances. There's a couple of points in the game where you'll need a specific ring to progress, but outside of that I'd recommend a resistance ring for general purposes. The Ring of Steel Protection is arguably best for just general adventuring, but you'll likely come across a wide range of rings to test out on your travels. This build provides a nice balance of speed, sustainability, and versatility. There is no situation you cannot deal with, and in some regions of the game you will really shine. The range of your equipment allows for a few different approaches to combat. You can two-hand the sword for maximum damage, though I would recommend more often going with sword and board, allowing you to block attacks comfortably and then slash back when the opportunity arises. Do remember to lower your shield in order to regain some stamina though, as even with the maxed out bar you can't take blows forever. You don't need to rely entirely on your blade to get by though, as you can always just shoot your enemies from a distance. This typically doesn't work well in boss battles, but against standard enemies it can be a true lifesaver. Just make sure to keep a good supply of arrows in your backpack. Miracles can help to increase your sustainability, allowing you to take the odd hit and heal up between battles. Of course it would be much better not to take any damage at all, and with the high speed provided by keeping equip load under 25%, you can roll out of the way of nearly every attack. It's far better to avoid the hit entirely, but if you haven't yet learned an enemy's attack pattern then it may be safer to take the hits on your shield. And there we have my first Dark Souls build. If you want to see more of this game from me, then not only is there the playlist I mentioned at the start of the video, but I will also have just begun my Dark Souls Randomizer challenge run. I'll leave a link to it in the description below so that you can see how I got on with taking on the game when every enemy, boss and item is randomised. For now though, I just want to remind you to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, comment your thoughts down below, and maybe even check out my Patreon page if you do want to go the extra mile. As always, thanks for watching. Sarge out.